This is some breaking news, a topic that I think a lot of people might not have saw coming, but still it is, here to say, none the least. So let me break this down for you guys. Let's get into it. All right, the not very important OpenAI thing. Okay, so entering in, Sammy boy, he's out. Okay, I'm gonna cut the bullshit. He's out. Okay, he got fired out of the blue, at least to all of us, and even to Microsoft, which I'll pop something on the screen right now because I was too lazy to put this in the slideshow. But yeah, even Microsoft did not know, like 5 minutes before the rest of the world, that this was happening. I'm not sweating it too much. If I were you guys, there's a lot more reasons later into the video, but main reason, he's still rich, famous, and successful. So if I had to be fired tomorrow, I'd rather be in that position than, minimum wage or whatever, the equivalent to how much he's making compared to his employees. He's definitely fine, right? Financially and all that type of stuff. So yeah, take that into account. And turtleneck, I'm sorry, I cannot refer to this guy by his name because every time I just see this photo and I'm like, Steve Jobs, I cannot get this out of my mind. He's out of the job too. All right, like they're going on a fucking killing spree. I don't know what the hell they're doing up there, but they're literally like it's insane. It's insane. Honestly, it's insane. I would say now, thinking about it, most expected. Just from the first time I saw this dude's photo, I knew he was full of shit. I don't know what the hell happened, as we're gonna get later into the video, but I can tell you, this guy doesn't look like, open and honest CTO or whatever the hell his position was. I just remember him from the GPT-4 demo. Again, this dude, oh my god, this dude, I don't know. Something about that turtleneck, I guess. So we should probably get into the news. So before and after, I think this sums everything, right? Before on the board, we had Sam Altman, obviously, and we had Greg Brockman. I believe, yeah, it literally says it right. Greg Brockman. Greg Brockman. But now, after, as you can see, no more. They're taking a leave. Okay, we'll go with that. They're taking a leave. They're taking a leave of absence. Let's just go with that. Yeah, they're completely wiped out of the current board. And for people who do not know, the way that OpenAI is structured as a company, wild. It's bonkers. But the core of it is that they have a non-profit company and like a regular for-profit company. And basically the non-profit company, which is this board, controls all the controlling shares. I might be getting that wrong, but I know that they have control over it, right? So for example, Microsoft recently bought 50% of OpenAI, but they don't have any of the controlling shares. The nonprofit board does. That's why they're able to make these types of decisions so quickly that even Microsoft now. And this is the board. Well, was the board, and as you can see, this is the after effect of what went down. And as you can see, the only person on this list that is left that is semi-recognizable is Ilya Sutskever, the chief scientist, the person behind ChatGPT and all that stuff. But yeah, this is the current board situation. Some photos to give you some illustration. These people are all the original board, but now as you can see, Sam obviously he's gone. Greg obviously he's gone. And this is the current board. One interesting fact about this board, which I don't think a lot of people know or have noticed, I should say, is that the guy on top with the name tag, Adam D'Angelo, I don't know what the hell his name is. He is the CEO of Quora. But if you know anything about Quora, recently they've had this huge push into generative AI models like ChatGPT. And if you know anything about that push, you would know that they have a similar service to ChatGPT, but that is pretty much, I'd say, semi-superior in certain aspects. There's a lot of debate you can get into about, like, okay, this has this and that, this and that. But Poe, that service, right? That service has not just, the GPT models like GPT-3, GPT-4, but it also has other models like Claude and even Llama, or whatever the hell you call Facebook's open source model. And I was wondering, like, how is this person, how's Quora getting all this access? How are they doing all these things so quickly? It's out that their board member, right, person who can literally control the company, is running Quora, which obviously owns Poe, right? So what does this mean, right? What does this mean for the company of OpenAI? What the hell does this mean for the future of AI? What the hell does this mean for everything? Because it feels like every, bit of piece of truth that we had kind of builds up, right? With Sam Altman, for God's sakes, getting canned out of the blue, right? There's a lot of theories going around right now, right? Twitter, that there's like, okay, OpenAI employees, they've been like sick of the, Altman and Greg shit, and they're basically like, yeah, let's get these people out of here. They're assholes. They're not following any of our, principles of actual open AI, right? About, creating safety. Who knows what that means to them? At least for Greg, turtleneck. Sorry, I don't know why I'm going in on this guy and Sam Altman, but I don't know what's going on in their minds, right? But from the general gist right now, it's seemingly that Sam Altman and Greg, his little lackey that they like to put it, were not good for the company, right? They prioritized the profit part instead of the non-profit part, the original mission, and they were trying to speed up development. Dev Day was a shit show, which I have a whole entire another thing about that, about like what the hell went down there. Might be true, why that, the GPT Turbo model might not actually be like the intended turbo model, essentially. And why things might have been so intense after that, which kind of points to my theory being semi-true to a point. That's a whole entire another topic, so I'm not going to get into it here. But essentially, they were not happy with the way that Altman was pushing, ChatGPT and all that type of stuff over like the actual research and work and like safety work that needed to be done to reach the original goals of the nonprofit, essentially, right? And this culminated over, however amount of time. But the biggest takeaway from this is that, at least from it seems legitimate sources, is that there was a lot of dysfunction in that company. I'm not talking about like, oh, the startup does, we hire people, we're firing people, we're moving quick, we jump into this product instead of this product. No, that's just a startup, right? There was a lot more going on there, but it seems like in this case scenario, there was a lot going under the surface, for them to be this, out of it, essentially. So after that point, all right, we understand, okay, everything's in chaos, scrambles, etc., etc. Employees are saying, oh, we need, actual leadership that holds up our principles and values and shit. Other people are on the other side who are like, no, we need to sell this shit like hotcakes. Which actually is really, really, really interesting timing, considering that ChatGPT is currently semi-closed down, right? Like, you have to wait on the wait list if you want to sign up currently right now, because they're experiencing such demand, at least what they're saying, right? Especially with the statement that came out after this of why the board dropped Sam Altman. Let's just say that we should be a bit more critical of whatever he says from now on, which he should have been doing from the beginning. So now that we, figure that out, right? Okay, company going through dysfunction, etc., etc. What is the missing link? Okay, what is really going on here? what is actually the problem and what led to this? Well, as you can see here, right? Picture of Ilya Sutskever, chief scientist, basically like the actual brains behind ChatGPT, right? Behind the OpenAI team. And you can see here the super alignment is highlighted. But a lot of people are gonna go crazy over the recent executives change. Listen to me here, right? Listen to me here. Sam Altman getting fired isn't actually that big of a deal. I know that sounds a bit, out there. But it really is. And the reason I say that is because Sam Altman is a businessman, right? He, before this, was a Y Combinator CEO. And before that was he had a app company or some shit like that. I forgot like a lot. But he's basically been in this bubble, right? For a little while, right? Like the startup bubble for a while. He's not really known for creating or having breakthroughs in any academic fields, right? And if you think about it, right, the core of OpenAI is that it's a lab, right? Before ChatGPT, everybody essentially saw OpenAI as just that, a lab, right? One of the top labs, especially in language models. It was essentially the top lab. At least from my perspective, it was essentially the top lab, right? They were the only one that had models that were anywhere near the biggest GPT-3 for a long time, and it was pretty much the industry standard. So that's what OpenAI is, right? And if you were to go and say, okay, who in a lab would be the most important role in all of this? You would probably say not the CEO. That's pretty much like the whole entire gist of it, right? Like the CEO or the executive team to a certain point, obviously people need to get paid, you need to find talent, you need to structure things, you need to do stuff. So I'm not saying Sam Altman was completely useless or whatever, in that endeavor, right? But I'm saying people are gonna be like, oh my God, will OpenAI lose its edge? Will the, OpenAI startup, burst into flames? No, right? Because they have a world-class team of scientists and researchers at the actual, company, right? The actual lab, right? This basically means that what, Microsoft paid 50% for wasn't actually the executive team, right? They already have the top industry's executive teams, right? They don't need, right? What they paid for was access to the world's leading scientists. Like Ilya Sutskever. Ilya Sutskever, their chief leading scientist, like I said before, the person who is responsible for GPT, right? The person who is responsible for all this success in a lot of ways. Not saying he's the only person. There are other people, obviously, on the team. There was an interview with one of their ex-employees, Paul. He invented RHLM, right? And that's what, sprung ChatGPT into action. Again, another technical member. I forget the name of the person for this one. But Anthropic CEO. He was originally on the OpenAI startup as well, but he quit and he went and started his own startup, and they're definitely competing right now, right? So to say that all these people are on the executive team who made this progress is bullshit. There's still a lot, right? And that's why I say that really not much has happened if you look at it from that perspective to OpenAI. Obviously, management is important, morale is important, employees are, wanting to do their best work is important, all that type of stuff, right? So you can attract the best talent, all that type of stuff, to be able to work on such things as AGI and whatever comes next or whatever. Very, very important milestones. But to say that this was the disruption is not true. In fact, the real disruption, if you've been following the events in the news recently, is that Ilya Sutskever, chief scientist, right, which is essentially the CEO in this case scenario of importance, stepped down from his role and went to work on the super alignment team, is why I got that circled, full time, right? This means a lot of stuff, right? This means a lot of things, but the number one thing, right? The number one thing that this means, right, is that the biggest shift already happened internally, right? The biggest thing that everybody's screaming about, everybody's talking about, already happened, right? But it happened under everybody's like noses, right? For people who didn't really understand what was going on. So this happening after was just like a side effect, right? It wasn't really that crazy. Cause think about it. Your main A player guy, right? Who is a board of the member, a co-founder, and your chief scientist who led you to here, right? It was, top talent, right? Elias Escobar, he's one, if not one of the top scientists in the world, but especially in his domain of AI, like, there are only probably like practicing people in the field who are doing the amount of work he's doing right now. There probably only is like 2 other people I can think of right now. And there's a lot of, obviously important work that needs to be done here. And this type of person you would expect to be full-time on ChatGPT. You'd be ChatGPT-ing it up every time that he steps out of the house. You'd be ChatGPT. Put that role, right, to focus on, instead of focusing on the next GPT model, but focus on how do we make the next GPT model actually safe, right? Like, how do we actually guide these models to do what we actually need them to do instead of applying, half-baked Band-Aids onto them? How do we do that? That shift there, as you go through, like I said, that timeline, the history of events, you will understand that's a really, really, really big thing. As you can see, we have a photo of the best man on this planet, Elias Escobar. No. But let's get into the actual meeting. So if you want to know, right, what's happening right now, what's actually happening with OpenAI right now, you have to actually understand what OpenAI premise really is, right? Because a lot of people who came after ChatGPT really don't know what OpenAI is. And I saw, big tech company that made chatbot, and now it's like one of the best growing products in all of history, et cetera, et cetera. But no, OpenAI has been around for a while. Well, not that long in like history, but it's been along, the roads, you could say, in this field for this emerging field of GPTs for a while, right? When OpenAI started, right, it initially started with the core mission of being able to make safe, right, AGI that benefits all of humanity, right? And it was not started as a company like I was speaking about earlier. It was started as a lab, right? The reason that I say that point is that to be able to understand why this change is so huge, the actual change is so huge, you would need to be able to understand that core fact, right? That OpenAI started as a lab with the goal of being able to create safe AI for it, essentially. So when a couple months ago, when OpenAI announced that they're having a super alignment team, right? And not just a super alignment team, right? Like, they didn't just throw a couple interns and say, oh yeah, we're doing this, look at our safety and all that type of stuff, but actually take their top talent, right? And their biggest talent, I would say, in this context, because if you think about it, a lab, right? Elias Escobar himself, chair member, remember, co-founder, remember, chief scientist, remember, all right? He stepped down from his, post at the top, essentially. And he said, hey, I'm going to go work on this. This is where my attention's going to be at. And in this context, if you're thinking about a lab, right, the most important role is the chief, right? This is the people who are actually leading the employees day to day, right? So it's not about the company side as much, right? You wouldn't go to a leading science lab in the world and be like, oh my God, what's your executive team looking like? Right? You wouldn't be like, oh my God, look at these, CEOs and stuff like that, as much as you would do in a traditional startup, essentially, right? Because you understand, startups is a very big term, and obviously coders matter, but you get what I'm trying to say. There's not as much of the entrepreneurship when you're starting a lab, right? When your goal is to start a lab, your goal is to do research, usually, or create drugs or whatever, products to help people or whatever. But you get what I'm trying to say here. The goal isn't necessarily to have, the most entrepreneurial type Wall Street, people in there and be like, that's what makes a good lab, right? So when you take that perspective of saying, wow, your chief scientist just left, right? Essentially equivalent to your CEO, right? It was like when Steve Jobs was kicked out of Apple, right? Except Ilya Sutskever stepped down from his podium and instead focused his attention in the company all on super alignment, right? You would say, wow, that's probably something going on there. And that's really, the big thing here, right? The hidden link here, right, is that Ilya Sutskever, right, he, essentially the helm of the ship, decided to say, hey, a couple months ago, I'm dipping out on this side. What's up? And now we see Sam Altman and Greg all jump ship, right? Like they're basically like ejected like that. But when you think about it, right, this makes so much more sense when you put it in that context, right? The chief scientist already had problems, essentially. Saw problems, I should say. And he was like, yeah, we can keep doing this or we cannot. And this actually gets into the, follow-up thing that I actually think is very important to the story, right? So Ilya Sutskever, like I said, is one of 6 members on the board originally. Now that they've kicked out Greg and Sam Altman from the company, essentially, because Greg literally just quit like an hour or two ago from this recording on Twitter. He basically just said to everybody that OpenAI, right, is basically like, yeah, this isn't OpenAI as he thought, right? Because he would be the deciding factor if you look at the board and how things are set up, right? Because Sam Altman wouldn't vote himself out. Neither would Greg vote himself out. So therefore, if they wanted to vote somebody out, that means he would have had to been the tipping vote, right? The 6 people, right? You wouldn't need more than 3 people. You need minimum 4 people to vote somebody out, right? So that means Ilya Sutskever had to say, yeah, right? I don't want, the company as we see it right now to keep going down the ship, right? Like I said, he already jumped ship, right, a couple months ago by swapping teams, right? ChatGPT is literally the fastest legitimately growing product in history. And it was like, fuck that shit, essentially. And he was like, yo, I could focus on this, focus on the bag, get that money, get all that success and clout, whatever. Or I could be what I consider a GOAT move, right? Potentially, at least, right? We can see how things play out. I 100% believe that we should be cautious, right? But this is a GOAT move, no matter how you look at it, when you see the context here, right? In his recent interview with MIT, I believe, he had one of the best quotes possible. I'm doing it for my own self-interest. It's obviously important that any super intelligence anyone builds does not go rogue. Obviously. This dude was basically like, yeah, I'm not gonna bullshit and virtue signal like you about quote-unquote OpenAI, like Sam Altman, Greg, all this bullshit, etc., etc. I'm gonna give it to you real, right? In the world that I see right now, what's going on is that I don't know about you, but this doesn't seem as open as it used to be, right? When we have Microsoft, doing whatever they do, when we have a company that's original purpose was this, but now we're focusing on selling, shitty little GPTs in the store with a turbo model that saves us even more money. So we can sell even more of these things, right? And we don't care, right? We don't care. We don't give a fuck. We don't give a fuck, right? We don't give a fuck. Essentially, that this is getting money, right? We don't care that we are a multi-billion-dollar startup. If we're not doing what we originally went to this building to do, then fuck it all, right? Like, straight up. There was literally, like, no hesitation. The reason I say it like that, because you have to understand, right? If Microsoft didn't know 5 minutes before the rest of the world did, there was some big disruption going on there. And with quotes like this of actual honesty, right? Not putting up a a facade, not putting up a face, not trying to sell anybody a dream or whatever. Like, just actual, at the end of the day, honesty, right? If anybody else gonna believe in the situation, I believe this guy, right? I believe the chief scientist who stepped down from this post to get even more success and fame. I believe the guy who admitted, like I said, anybody with a rational mind, right? Like, hey, AI is a really big thing. Let's not fuck this up because we want to make some money in the moment, right? I trust that guy, right? I don't know about you. I trust that guy over Samuel Good with his open plans for the future. So yeah, that's essentially what this video wraps down to, is GOAT moves, at least looking right now, right? I'm saying be cautious, obviously, keep your eyes, right? Like, this could be a shit show, who knows? But at least right now, right? Like I said, the lab is still intact, right? The talent is still there, right? People are still, there hasn't been like so much jumping ships yet, right? Tomorrow they could be like half of the employees quit or whatever. But right now, the lab's still intact. From what we're getting online from other sources, like I was talking about before, it seems like there's a bit of excitement, especially if this new management team that comes in isn't as open AI about this, right? That's kind of a meme word at this point because of how close they become. But you get the idea. You get the idea. Things look in that perspective. It literally looks like a leapfrog, right? But we'll see what happens, but I needed to get this out, especially today, since this is literally some of the biggest news in the whole entire scene. So yeah, if you enjoyed this video, make sure to like, subscribe, and leave a comment. I want to hear your opinion. All right, see ya.